Okay, so we've gone through all of the mode names and we've learnt the shapes that are associated with those names. Now another way you can practice this is to do it all from one position. So say for example, we're going to go all the way down to the G note again on the low E string. And you want to see or test yourself to see whether you know the shapes well enough, but not in the given positions that you learnt them in order up the neck, but you want to do it in one position. So if we start with G, you can play an Ionian shape from the root of G. So starting from the same root note, you would then play a Dorian shape. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, then a Phrygian shape. Okay, moving on from that, we've got a Lydian shape from the same root. Then Mixolydian. Then Aeolian. And then last of all, Locrian. Okay, so that's a really good way to test whether or not you know the positions that are associated with those mode names. So all of what I've gone through at the moment is just a systematic way of just teaching yourself the name, the shapes, and just different ways of being able to practice them so you really do know them. Now, the other thing I want to add to the playing in the one position thing that I just did is that all the other positions link on to that shape that you play. So let's just say, for example, that I play like an Aeolian shape from the G note. The next shape that follows on from that is going to be the next natural position that you would have learnt in your major scale positions when we did them all in G, but we're just doing it at a different point. So it's going to be a Locrian shape that follows the Aeolian shape, because if you look at the list of mode names, that's the shape that comes next. So then where do you end up after Locrian? Well, you end up back at the start, so then you have Ionian. So regardless of musical application at this stage, you just are starting to fundamentally understand what the shapes are, what the names to those shapes are, and then how they relate to each other. And that alone, even if you don't understand the kind of sound of what modes is, that's essentially the best grounding I think I could kind of give anyone, really, is to sort of like learn all of that, understand how it all connects, and then you move on to stage 3, which is the sound. So if you remember, you got the name, the shape. We've both covered that. Well, we've covered both of those, sorry. And then the third one, which is the sound, which is inherently the most important thing about modes, or moods if you like, because now you're starting to create the sound of what it actually is in a musical context. And understanding that, the only way you can really do it is to put it in context, so you can hear what these modes sound like if you were writing certain chord progressions and you wanted to get that sort of, Lydian sound, or you want to get that kind of Aeolian sound, or whatever it is that you want to do. Fundamentally learning this as a base level thing before going into that is really going to help. I think the trouble is with my own learning is I didn't really do it as systematically as this. I understood a lot about scale shapes and how stuff joined together just from jamming and playing to records, but not really understanding why it was creating the sound that it was. Um, and then someone tried to explain modes to me. It completely blew my mind, and then I was like, right, okay, because there was things like, you know, tonic and all that, all those kind of musical terms, which, you know, unless that's something that you really want to learn or that you're interested in, I kind of sort of stayed away from all of that because it just confused me. I didn't understand what tonic meant, or I didn't understand, you know, what kind of I don't know why I keep using that term, but there's other terms. I just can't think of it off the top of my head at the moment, and that's pretty much because I never think of music in those terms. I just think of it in terms of like, well, shape initially, and then it moved on to like using my ear and really kind of understanding what it is that a particular sound sounds like. So, I mean, just to kind of like run through my perception of what like mode sounds like before we get down to the sort of fundamental reasons of why that kind of works, is say like Ionian, for example. It's the sort of kind of major sound. It's very happy. It's all kind of very hopeful sounding. Then moving to Dorian, it's very similar to Aeolian, but it's slightly different, whereas it sounds kind of bluesy. So yeah, you know, there's some really cool ideas that you can explore, especially integrating those 3-note per string scales with the pentatonic shapes as well. Because once you kind of get into that bluesy sounding thing, it's very important that you add in the sort of pentatonic element as well, just so you can really bring out the sound of what you're trying to do. Phrygian for me is almost kind of Spanish sounding kind of thing, you know, flamenco, all of that kind of stuff. Lydian is probably one of the most popular modes that say like Vai and Satriani use. It's that very kind of dreamy sort of sound. Mixolydian, I suppose, is something that you would associate with like, say, Summer Song by Joe Satriani. I would kind of think it's very sort of majory again, but it's got a slightly different twist on it. And then my personal favourite, which is Aeolian, which is like the natural minor scale, which is pretty much what you would play that would work perfectly with your minor pentatonics and your 3-note per string scales, and it sounds kind of heavy and dark, and that's how I write a lot of my music, using that kind of mode. And then, you know, the Locrian, it's not really a mode that I use, so I'm not really going to go into detail about it in this tutorial. There's probably loads of other ways to sort of like understand how that works, but the shape and the name are still important in this context, because obviously you want to learn all 7 shapes of the major scale. You don't just want to learn 6 and then leave one out, because Locrian is actually a really nice shape. I use it a lot for, you know, when I'm playing in different modes and stuff like that. It's just a really nice shape that fits under the fingers really well, so you can get a lot of shredding value out of it anyway.